and welcome to the fourth installment of Recruiting Insider Live. I'm Branden Roth, and we definitely got an exciting show for you today. Finally have our first live guest as a DC sports fan, and Northwest Current's Brian Kapur will be joining us here in a few minutes. And we've got a lot of things on the slate to talk about. We're going to start off with talking about some of the highest profile players in the WCAC, and who might win Player of the Year, and where these guys fit in at the next level. We're also going to talk about some of the lesser-known guys in the WCAC who are college-level athletes and where they may end up at the next level. Some guys that maybe aren't getting as much love as they should. We're also going to talk some Terps. I've got a new Terps segment that I'm going to start doing every week where we do more than talk just recruiting. We talk recent Terps play, whether it's going to end up being basketball or football or lacrosse, whatever it may be. We're going to talk Terps, and we're also going to talk impact of the Duke game, loss to Boston College, a little bit of everything. So stay tuned here. I'm going to start getting into some highlights of a few of the guys that I'm really considering, and no others are considering for WCAC Player of the Year. The first guy we're gonna start with is BeeJay Anya. He's obviously one of the biggest returning guys in the WCAC. We're gonna run through some highlights of the few guys that I think are really being considered up there, and then we'll have Brian Kapur join us, and we'll talk about what's going to happen with these guys. So let's look at BeeJay Anya real quick.
BeeJay is the best defensive center that I can remember playing for DeMatha. His offense is coming around, working very hard on that. He can go down as one of the best DeMatha basketball centers that we've ever had.
I hope to be able to play at the next level and do whatever I can to reach my high potential and be able to take care of my family.
All right, you heard a few things from BeeJay there at the end. That was a piece I did on BeeJay last year. Obviously, BeeJay is a big center, big-bodied guy, 6'10". Used to be a lot bigger than he was, lost a lot of weight in the offseason last year, but he's got great post game, a good rebounder, good shot blocker, and he'll be going to NC State next year. The next guy we're going to look at is Melo Trimble, and let's look at some highlights of him real quick. Those are just a few highlights of Melo. Obviously, he committed to Maryland a few months back. That our very own Brian Kapur broke that story. So he's going to be a combo guard at Maryland, but he will play point. And he's another guy who's just a really good scorer. He's got a really good jump shot. So we'll talk a little bit more about him later. The last guy I want to get into is Kris Jenkins out of Gonzaga, maybe the most consistent player I've seen over the past 2 years. I've got a lot of highlights of him, and I've actually got some interviews I did with him recently and Coach Turner about how he fits in at at Villanova, and what he expects immediately for playing time and his role coming up on that Villanova team next year. So let's look at those and see what Kris has to say.
First play of the game, you made it. I said, oh man.
This is where Gonzaga got up. You know, they had some big shots, and you know, we didn't make.
I think for him was finding the best fit all around. Academically, he wanted to find another place that was similar to what he got here at Gonzaga, as well as being able to find on the court a coach that he was going to be comfortable playing for, and a program where the style was going to be conducive to his strengths as a basketball player. And the guys at Villanova did a tremendous job of recruiting Kris and showing him where he fit into their program. And at the end of the day, that's what helped him make his decision on choosing Villanova over some of the other schools that recruited him.
I mean, going on that, how do you think he fits in immediately next year?
I think what he brings to them right away is a guy that can score in a variety of ways. He gives them another versatile scorer. Coach Wright runs, that kind of a four out of round one system. He's going to be able to use Kris in a number of ways, being able to play him somewhat as a mid-post guy that can face up and create mismatch problems, but then there's another guy that can step outside the three-point line and stretch the defense for them.
Just Coach Jay Wright, his coaching staff, they presented me with a plan that I couldn't say no to, and then it's also a great academic school, and it's just a great opportunity.
I mean, what are your hopes for next year? I mean, you're hoping for immediate playing time? I mean, what are your expectations for next year?
Next year, I just want to go there, get accustomed to the family style that they have there with the team, that family atmosphere, and then the playing time, and that's just up to how hard I work when I get there.
First play of the game, you made it.
All right, and we're back live. Brian Kapur has joined us here by phone. He's the sports editor of the Northwest Current and the reporter for DC Sports Fan. Thanks for joining us, Brian.
Great being on with you.
I guess we're just going to start off and talk about WCAC Player of the Year. I mean, obviously we've narrowed it down to these three guys already. I mean, who do you think is the front runner right now?
I think you've got to go with Kris Jenkins once again. He's just been such a clutch player throughout the year. Gonzaga ran the table. And if you look at the help that Kris has around him, his supporting cast is pretty good. But if you look at what the other guys have, BeeJay, Anya, when those guards are shut down, he can get the ball inside. And DeMatha has really struggled, so I would take him out of the equation. Melo Trimble and O'Connell played so well at times this year, but then you have juniors alongside him, and he's another one of the better players in the conference. So that's very much a dynamic duo. Whereas with Jenkins, it's pretty much only Jenkins with some strong supporting cast around him, but I think he has less help than Melo.
Definitely. It's hard to disagree with you there. I mean, it's hard to say that Kris hasn't been the most consistent player in the league over the past 2 years. I mean, a lot of people thought he deserved All-Met Player of the Year last year, and I know Pat Holloway ended up getting it. I mean, what do you think of that decision?
I was shocked because last year BeeJay had a great championship run, but when you look at their collection of guys, they had several people that were very skilled together, but no one superstar. Whereas Kris, as I mentioned earlier, kind of the same look with Gonzaga last year. He was the go-to guy. He was the star, and we were both, I believe you were there as well, at Coolidge when he hit that buzzer beater against Crime Stopper. Was it that game?
Yeah.
And he really took over as the leader in that game after Nate missed most last year with injury. So I think he should be a two-time All-Met Player of the Year. He was kind of robbed last year, in my opinion.
Yeah, it's hard not to agree with you there. And when I talked to Turner a couple weeks ago, he said the same thing. So, I mean, obviously, I think everyone probably in the area agrees right now that Jenkins probably going to end up winning WCAC Player of the Year. But Melo Trimble definitely gave him a run for it. I mean, do you think there's any chance that if Melo has a big tournament and they end up maybe winning the championship, he could pull that off?
I think a lot of times the champion of the tournament has their best player awarded, and it's close enough between Jenkins and Melo where I could see that maybe happening, but O'Connell would have to win the tournament, and Melo would have to come up big, which if O'Connell wins, he definitely would be coming up big, because it seems as if Chirito has kind of tailed off a little bit since the Deadspin stuff has come out. His production hasn't been quite what it was, so it's very much been all on Melo down the stretch.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, when I saw them play Gonzaga, not in the last game, but the game before that, Melo was really the only guy on the court who really did a whole lot that game. I mean, Junior wasn't doing anything. Jenkins was lighting him up all game. And you saw Gregory and Butts. They had been big contributors early in this season, and they weren't doing a whole lot either. So I think we both are in agreement on that. I think Jenkins deserves Player of the Year in WCAC, but let's go on and talk about where these guys fit in at their respective colleges. You're really familiar with Romello. You broke his commitment story. I mean, how do you think he fits in at the next level with Maryland?
I think if you put him on the team that Maryland has right now, he'd be the starting point guard, and they would probably be very close to being in the tournament, if not a solid bubble team compared to where they are now. And then you have Roddy Peters coming in as well, so Melo probably going to play the two. But he's a combo guard, and from what I've heard between him and Peters, they're going to be interchangeable with Turgeon. So I think he's a great fit, and the fact that he's staying local and going to Maryland, the big key at Maryland will be Alex Len. Does he go? Who is Alex Len? Is he the kid that dominated Plumlee against Duke? Or the guy that did he even make the trip to Boston College? I don't know if I saw him up here in that game the way he played.
Yeah, we'll get into that here in a few minutes, but I mean, we've talked about it before. I mean, Turgeon's finally starting to get into the WCAC, something Gary Williams never really did, and I mean, we've both acknowledged that that's a good thing. I mean, how important do you think? We've seen all these guys. Obviously, Oladipo's blown up lately. Quinn Cook, the Grant brothers. I mean, how important is it for Turgeon in particular to get into the WCAC?
That's huge. I mean, I've been doing this for about between 7 to 8 years at this point, which is crazy to believe, but I have seen Turgeon at least 6 times already in his 2 years. I never saw Gary Williams once at a WCAC game, and that just speaks volumes. I mean, he's going after the right type of kids. David Neal was the last WCAC kid for Melo, and I mean, you can't do that. That's why Georgetown stayed relevant. the Austin Freemans that have come by, the Chris Wrights, and Maryland didn't even have a shot at those guys. And the fact that you get Melo is huge. And it's interesting. You brought up Victor Oladipo. He wasn't the mainstay. He seemed to be the type of guy that you could see Gary Williams going after because he was that second-tier type of guy like Greivis Vasquez was at a Montrose, and yet he couldn't even get Oladipo. And Oladipo right now, everyone's seeing how special he is at Indiana. I had front row seats to that show at the Math, and that was an incredible show. And I'm not shocked by any means at what he's doing.
Yeah, and it's definitely nice to be able to cover the WCAC, especially. You see so many guys that play big at the next level, and going off of that, I mean, let's get into BeeJay Anya. I mean, how do you think BeeJay fits in with NC State next year?
I think he gives them another solid post option. I think this year at Commander, he hasn't had a down year, but the supporting cast around a player like Anya, you got to have shooters, and you got to be able to threaten and loosen up the defense that way. Hasn't happened at the Matha this year, and that's been one of the biggest problems. I think NC State has the guards to be able to help them in that respect, and I think he will be a problem in the ACC, one that Maryland probably won't have to deal with too long as they move to the Big Ten.
Yeah, I know. I've talked to a lot of different people. A lot of people have said there's going to be somewhat of a learning curve at the next level for Anya. I mean, do you agree with that, or?
I think so. I think some of his post moves could use a little bit of work, but he's come leaps and bounds. I remember seeing him as a freshman at the end of the bench, very overweight, rarely got any time unless it was a blowout. Although those teams were loaded, you had the Grants and Oladipo and all those guys, but what he's really worked himself into the player he is, dropped a lot of weight, really added to his post game, but he is just scratching the surface. He has a lot of room to grow. He's going to be a little undersized. I mean, right now he's very big for the WCAC, but size-wise, that's going to even up, so he's going to have to find some ways to make a difference in terms of getting stronger and getting leaner.
Definitely. I mean, that's the one thing you look at him. He's lost a lot of weight since your freshman year, like you said, and I think he's definitely going to have to lose a little bit more to really get up and down the court with the ACC competition. But the last guy, obviously, we want to talk about is Jenkins. I mean, how do you think he fits in with Villanova?
Jenkins has always been an interesting prospect because where does he fit in? His size. Is he a guard? Is he a power forward? Is he a small forward? And it's gonna. I think he's a great talent, but this year he really came in the season out of shape. He started to kind of play himself into shape, and he's looked better down the stretch. And I think at the next level, he's definitely gonna kind of have to go to that boot camp, and he's gonna have to get in much better shape. And once he does that, I think he could kind of be a bit of an Antoine Jamison type in terms of a big three, but an undersized four. I could see him kind of fitting into that type of role. He needs to work on his outside shot a little bit. He has a great outside shot now, but a little bit more of that. He has, I think, better post moves than outside shooting. So I think once you put those two together, and then you have Josh Hart there, of course, who worked out for getting with Sidwell and a tailspin down the stretch. I think both of them coming in are going to push each other and be very good for Wildcat Nation out in Villanova.
Absolutely, and I mean, the one thing you get with Jenkins is you're going to get scoring right off the bat, and something that's going to definitely help Villanova out. We've talked about all these big names. Let's talk about a couple of guys who aren't as well known. Let's start off with Chuck Glover out of Villanova, out of Gonzaga. I've seen this kid play so much better this year than he played the last couple of years. I mean, what do you think about Charles Glover?
He's a glue guy, and I'm amazed that colleges haven't started lining up for this kid. At least a mid-major, if not better. His game reminds me a lot of Derek Fisher. He takes the charges. He can hit the big outside shots. He's very clutch. He's a good leader. And Kris Jenkins has been a lot of what Gonzaga does, but Gonzaga doesn't have all the wins they do without Glover's leadership in the backcourt. When you have young guards like Blackman and Brian Crawford back there. So Glover is a great talent, and a lot of teams are missing the boat on this guy. I think he's going to be a quality college player once someone does sign him.
Yeah, I looked at his offer sheet, and right now the only offer he has is from Howard. He's got interest from Siena, American, and Davidson, but no offers yet. So, I mean, you have to think his play over the last few weeks that he's gonna get some more offers. I mean, the game I saw against St. John's a couple weeks ago, they were down by 13 or 14 at half, and they went on a 19-1 run in the third, led by Chuck, who had 10 points just in the third quarter alone to bring them back and win that game. So, I mean, he's really stepped in for Nate Britt and been that second scorer that they've needed this year.
Wouldn't it be something if you were to go to American and have the WCAC championship win there potentially, and then play for American? I think that could be a pretty good fit for him.
Yeah, definitely. And I mean, you talk about the level of competition at American. He's going to get a chance to prove himself and play some big time schools there. So I think it would be a good fit too. I talked to Coach Turner a couple different times this year about Chuck. So let's cut to a few highlights I have of Coach Turner talking about Charles.
He's been huge for us all year long. I think he's personally been, like our unsung hero. And every night he just has a great stat line. He does all the little things that matters. Tonight when guys decided they wanted to double and triple team Kris, he understood when to cut and go find the open hole to the basket. He made some big offensive rebounds for us. He finished with probably his career high on both ends with a double-double of 23 and 13. And he's a senior. He's been with us for 4 years. He knows what I expect. And he has his mind on one goal, and that's to try to win the WCAC championship. So tonight, he left everything he had on the floor. We told him from the beginning of the season we were going to need him to play as strong as ever and be that second scorer for us. And the other thing he does really well that I think he doesn't get a lot of credit for is how well he's been defending for us. He's a senior. He's been a part of our program for 4 years. He really understands what I expect and what I want. And again, I've been saying it a lot. There's a lot of colleges out there missing the boat on this kid. He's open, so somebody better get smart and come jump on him. He's been huge for us all year long. I think he's personally been, like our unsung hero.
All right, you heard from Coach Turner there. Obviously, he thinks really high of Chuck, and I've been hyping Chuck up the last few weeks. I really hope some of these colleges get their things together and throw a couple offers his way, because he can definitely help at the next level, especially at the mid-major level. I definitely think he's a contributor there. So next guy I want to talk about is Leroy Butts out of O'Connell. I've seen him once or twice, and I was really impressed by him. He's a big kid. He's got a pretty well-rounded game. I mean, what do you think of that, of Leroy Butts, Brian?
I think he's another talented kid. Coach Joe has done a great job of stacking talent out of O'Connell, regardless of what people think of how he did it, whether it was done the right way or not. We may never know, but Butts has been phenomenal at times for O'Connell. And I think next year he's going to be a nice one-two punch with Melo, as both of them have their senior years. But Butts has been a great outside shooter. He's been explosive attacking the rim as well. So I think the offers will start to flow for him pretty soon. And he's another guy that might not, an under-the-radar type who might, end up being the next Oladipo,
Yeah, definitely. I mean, he's only a sophomore, so you'd have to think schools are going to start flowing into him a little bit at his junior year. It's usually when things explode. But right now, he's got interest from UVA, Tennessee, and Rutgers, so you're seeing high-level D1 interest in him. So let's go on to the last guy I want to talk about, Andre Walker out of Bullis, a big kid who transferred from public school. I know you recently got a chance to go out and see Bullis. What did you think of Bullis, and what did you think of Andre Walker?
I thought Bullis dominated St. Albans and were up to the IAC championship. The 2-year record that they put together with their senior class was phenomenal. Walker had to be fit the last year after transferring from Cardozo, but he is a beast as a defender. He can block shots, and he really was the thorn in St. Albans' side. He continually blocked shots, and in the post, right now he has the defensive game. His offensive game hasn't quite gotten there, but when it gets there, he's going to be very good. Right now, I kind of compare him a little bit to a Ben Wallace Hashim to be, whereas they have the defensive prowess, but not quite the offensive end of it. He was a late start to basketball, but talking to him afterwards in terms of interest, he listed a slew of schools, including Maryland, Georgetown, a lot of big-time schools looking at him, getting interested in him. So I think he could be one that could really heat up this summer during the AAU season.
Yeah, you look at his actual offers right now, and you see DePaul, Fairfield, and Delaware. So, like you talk about, he's still a pretty raw prospect. His offensive game still needs some working on, but you see some of these higher level schools maybe holding back a little bit until they see his offensive game progress a little bit. All right, well, that's it for high school recruiting talk tonight. Let's cut to our Terps intro real quick, and then we'll get back and have talk between two depressed Terps fans. All right, you see the new Terps intro there. All right, obviously, huge disappointment yesterday. The Terps, after a huge win against Duke, go to BC and lay a big egg in Boston. I mean, what were your initial reactions to the game, Brian?
My initial reaction was wondering if one was burned to the ground again out of frustration by Maryland fans, because that game was an absolute joke. I was in the office and I was watching it on a fuzzy ESPN feed, and I thought the score was 56-59. It was actually 50-59, and I was just very disappointed. Like I said before, did Alex Len make the trip? Did he get sick on that South Campus dining food? What happened to him? He's supposed to be a top 10 draft prospect. He didn't look one of those. I mean, he really should stay in school for another year to polish his game and get stronger. And I hope he does, but Maryland wasted a huge opportunity. You beat Duke and then you lay that egg.
Yeah, I mean, you see the Odio guy blocking his shots and playing better than him. It seems like he really struggles with some of those smaller power forwards types that are fast. I mean, he did the same thing against Justin Anderson. Turgeon left it on Anderson an entire quarter, and he got eaten up. So, I mean, you would think there has to be some game planning there on Turgeon's part to not leave Len on these smaller, quicker guys. He just can't cover them.
Yeah, they took advantage of him just kind of being slower big. But when you have that, the flip side of it is you're supposed to be bigger, stronger, and able to overpower them, and you never saw him take advantage of that.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, definitely. He seems like he gets up for these big games, but he kind of gets down for the smaller games. So something you got to improve on. Something else I saw is Seth Allen's play. I really, despite the turnovers in the Duke game, I was impressed with him at times, and he was another one who didn't do a whole lot in the Boston College game. I mean, what have you thought of his play the past couple games?
I think the biggest thing we got to remember with Maryland, they're all freshmen and sophomores, and you know, after the big win against Duke, and I actually have a video that I'm maybe releasing soon, where some of the Maryland players actually joined in on the Route 1 celebration. I went down there to check out what's going on, and a lot of Maryland players from the game were there, leading chants and all that. So, you know, you're a college kid, you're enjoying your time, but you're a basketball player. I don't know that you should be taking part in those types of things. And then they're just so young, they're inconsistent. Seth Allen falls into that. He made the big free throws against Duke. But right now, I think whatever Maryland does this year will be great, but everyone has to remember how young they are. So disappointed in a missed opportunity, but I believe the lessons learned from this season, games like BC, will be huge next season when I think Maryland can really make a tournament run.
Yeah, I mean, the Maryland blogs and recruiting websites and everything are all saying the bubble's popped, they're freaking out, everyone's depressed over the win or the loss, and understandably, but I mean, do you foresee any scenario where Maryland does squeak their way into the tournament this year?
Win the ACC tournament. I mean, that's the easiest way without needing a whole lot of help. I think if NC State can play better outside the tournament, maybe make themselves look better, that helps Maryland. If Duke can become the #1 team, that helps Maryland. But Maryland has to take care of their own business. They have to at least win out, and I think going into the tournament, they have to win all their games, and going into the tournament, perhaps they have to at least get to the championship game to have a shot. But at least they'll be in the NIT and we can celebrate that because we haven't had a tournament in College Park for quite a while. So it'll be nice to at least be in a tournament. And again, everyone gets excited, especially after you beat Duke. But you got to remember how young these guys are. Next year, they're going to be good. Both you and I have seen going after the right type of kids. I mean, you're going to have a Melo Trimble there soon. Roddy Peters. He is building it the right way, but they got to get more mature. And once that happens, the Big Ten and the NCAA needs to look out.
Definitely, definitely. All right, well, let's go back to that Duke game for just a minute. I mean, obviously that was a huge moment for the entire area. Every Maryland fan was rejoicing that night, and it was a huge atmosphere. I mean, you had the flash mob and the Harlem Shake going on. Everyone's been talking about that, and I mean, you had lots of recruits there. I mean, lots of big football recruits in the area, lots of big basketball recruits in the area. I mean, what do you think a game like that and the atmosphere like that does for, I mean, recruiting just in general?
I think if I was a recruit from Maryland and I was in that atmosphere, especially after the win, I'm looking for a pen and the paper to sign because, I mean, that's the type of atmosphere you can dream of. And I think that atmosphere that you have at basketball games, especially the big Duke Carolina games, all it really attracts basketball players. For football, though, where is that? I mean, I went to Maryland for 4 years. You're a student at Maryland now. For basketball game or for football games, excuse me, the atmosphere really isn't there. The tradition isn't there as much, and I think that's what they're trying to establish for us with the new uniforms. And I think it was great getting Stephon Diggs to stay local. I know both you and I were joking about the prospect of him going there when we were at the Council St. John's game 2 years ago, in the playoffs, and then all of a sudden he decides to go to Maryland. That was huge because, I mean, it's a local guy trying to rebuild a program, and I think you need to talk more guys into that idea of establishing something at Maryland football-wise. I think basketball-wise we're in a good place for recruiting. You have the somewhat recent national championship. You have the beautiful Comcast Center. Berg Stadium, I mean, to me it's unfinished. I wish it was a complete circle, but that's another story. Football, they need a lot more.
Yeah, definitely. And I mean, I think next year is going to be a year on the rise for Maryland. I mean, you saw them bring in a lot of good local recruits in this last recruiting cycle. A lot of the friendship pipeline has been built. Friendship Collegiate's been bringing good kids in every year. And I mean, I think the biggest thing for Maryland football this year is just going to be getting some consistent quarterback play. So we'll see how that pans out.
Yeah, the quarterbacking is going to be huge, but they're going to have to figure a lot of stuff out, especially once they go to that Big Ten. Because right now, I would see them as flipping boys in the Big Ten. Even Northwestern, I think, would be a dominant team that Maryland wouldn't be able to get a win against. So they have a year or two to figure that out, but that has to happen.
Yeah, I definitely agree with you there. All right, well, that'll do it for episode 4 of Recruiting Insider Live. I'm Branden Roth. I want to thank Brian Kapur for coming out. Go pick up the Northwest Current and read some of what he writes, or go look on DCSportsFan.com. Again, thanks for watching, and I'll see you guys next time.